Welcome into Behind the Mic in the SEC for our very last episode where we're covering Vanderbilt University, joined by Tatum Everett. Now, Tatum doesn't cover the Vanderbilt anymore, but she used to back in Nashville. Now she covers the Minnesota Vikings. How are you today, Tatum?
Doing great, Bree. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So just tell me how you got your career started.
Yeah, it's funny. I started the local route like a lot of people did back when it was kind of the only thing you really could do. There wasn't as many different types of media out there. And so I started at a small local cable station and moved my way up. I was in news stations in Texas, Louisiana, and most recently, as you mentioned, Nashville before taking a team job with the Minnesota Vikings, doing the same stuff basically, but more of an in-house media marketing tool and so it's been a really neat transition.
So tell me about your time in Nashville covering Vanderbilt. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I had a little bit of experience covering SEC teams before. So I was in Shreveport, Louisiana before Nashville for 5.5 years. And my company or my station was really great. They allowed us to cover LSU really closely. A lot of the people in North Louisiana obviously love the Tigers. And so I covered a lot from that vantage point. But it was very different for me because it was always from afar for so many things. We'd go to big events, right? But like we didn't do it like a beat reporter. And so being in Nashville, I kind of started covering Vanderbilt. Again, it was weird because it's not like a beat reporter. I think that in Nashville and covering Vanderbilt it doesn't take your top story often, right? Because you're in a pro sports town, which many of the SEC schools that maybe have stations in their towns or real nearby really don't have to compete with, right? Baton Rouge has its own market. A&M has its own market. Arkansas has Fayetteville TV stations right in their city. Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, like all the stations, if you think about it, like no one lives in the city. So I think that's a challenge for Vanderbilt to get the same amount of coverage as a lot of these SEC schools is because they're pretty low on the totem pole just within Nashville in general. You're competing against an NFL team, an NHL team. They now have MLS. It just seems like it's growing and growing. And so they just have to really compete for that airtime. Not to mention, it's one of those things where like people in Tennessee love the Vols. Not everyone in Nashville went to Vanderbilt. So you're competing against that as well. So it's a pretty interesting situation for them.
And whenever you were able to cover Vanderbilt, tell me about like the kind of the vibe of the fan base and how they feel about it and how is it different from other SEC schools? Because I know you're an LSU alum, you're no stranger to the SEC.
Yeah.
So what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like different sports matter more to some of their fan base. The football doesn't draw as much big of a crowd, but their baseball games are packed. They have such a strong tradition there with Tim Corbin as their head coach. And so I think that takes a lot of the focus. The hiring of Jerry Stackhouse has been great, but I think the main thing with Vanderbilt is that they are just now starting to try and keep up with the Joneses. They talk about their football renovations, all the renovations on campus for raising money for these things. I mean, their football stadium hadn't been updated since like the 1980s. And so I think that they're just trying to play catch up at this point. And the fans, I think, understand like Vanderbilt is more than just an athletic school. It's probably one of the best educations, if not the best education you can get in the SEC by far. Just their academic excellence is super high up there. So the type of athlete that they get sometimes might be more along those lines. Like it might be harder to draw in those really top-notch athletes because grades matter so much to Vanderbilt and what they do there. And so the fan base, I think, is maybe not as big, but just as loyal. Like you get the same interest and fandom that you do, but just maybe not like on a larger level.
And what do you think sets the SEC apart from every other conference that, is out there?
It just means more. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's that fandom and just the expectation of excellence. I'm a little biased too, but when it comes to the sports that are, NFL's king, right? Football is king. It always will be. If you have an NBA game and an NFL game, the NFL game will get top priority. That's just kind of like, I had a news director tell me one time, they're like, I don't care if it's not the NFL season, they're still the lead story. That's just how things go. Right. And so I think when you take a page out of that national landscape and you look towards what's important in college, you look at who's winning national championships, who's pouring money into their programs right now, who's putting money in the NIL. Those things matter to student athletes. And so when you start setting those trends, that's what they want to go do. They want to win championships and they want to make their NIL money now. And so I think that's the SEC has not shied away from that. They are looking for the best TV rights deals. They come up with the best athletes. They can attract the best of everything because they've set that standard from really early on. And not just in football, look at the women's basketball, look at gymnastics, look at track and field. Like it's across the board. Baseball. SEC is insane at baseball. I just think that when you start to like have that excellence, it's easier to keep that when you keep up the quality of player, the quality of the NIL money, and the quality of scholarships and educations that you're offering.
And has sports reporting always been something you wanted to do, or did it kind of like sneak up on you?
Yeah, no, I think, maybe like early on it snuck up on me. I think seeing women on television really inspired me, but it was just really like a conversation I had with my mom one day, like, hey, what do you want to do potentially? And she's like, you'd be really good at that. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right. I do like to talk, and then sports are fun, right? I was really bad at them. So I was always had a lot of respect for athletes. So knowing that I could talk for a living and kind of like just do something that I'm good at and used to get in trouble with in school, to make money later on in life would be a great idea, And so I think sports interested me and like nothing else really did. I don't love talking about like economy and politics and like life or death, like situations that are just so dire, right? Sports are just a game at the end of the day. So I think that's what attracted me towards it. And honestly, I don't know what else I could do. It's just a lot of fun doing it this way.
And you're a Manship alum. I'm getting ready to graduate from the Manship school. What do you think Manship has taught you that you've brought into your career and gotten you where you are now?
I would have to say it's probably just the connection with my fellow classmates. That it's nice. Like it's like a little fraternity that we're all in as you become a professional. It's like, oh, I went to LSU. It holds so much credibility when you go places, whether it's with the athletes that I talk to on a regular basis, whether it's the LSU alum who are on the Vikings that I now have an in with. It's my friends in the business who have gone on to do wonderful things that I can say, I know her, or, oh, I need to call her, or he knows her who knows her, and I need her for a show. And so I think that like those connections is something that started in college and has been fun for me to watch others grow. And then also just be able to keep those connections open to benefit all of us in the long run. Giving friends visibility as well as them giving me visibility has been really big. And so I think that's probably been the biggest part, were just like the students and the connections that I made.
And what was that transition like, going from being in local news for a big part of your career and now being a team reporter, making it to, the NFL level? Like, what was
Yeah.
that transition like, and how has that been treating you?
I think it was such a welcomed change because local TV is such a grind, right? Like your schedule is just not great all the time. You really have to work longer, and it feels like, and maybe this is the case for just me, but it felt like I had to work longer to get what I deserved as far as like pay. So I really like that I have a better work-life balance here. I'm still doing important work. I'm still getting to do what I love. I get to tell stories. I get to host shows. I host podcasts, one-on-one interviews with some of the brightest names in football. And like that stuff is just not lost on me, that I get to do that every day. And while I'm not super stressed like I was trying to keep up with like 12 different sports, I am focused on the NFL. I'm focused on the Vikings. I'm focused on college football. Like that's kind of like the core of what I need to know and understand. And I like that. That's what I want. I've always thought that with local, it just stretched me too thin and I knew just a little about a lot. And right now I know a lot about a little. And I really, really like that. It's just that's what's important to me as I grow in this career. You start to kind of figure out what you want to do the more you do random things or where you move or whatnot. And this was just a really good fit for me on a lot of levels. And I feel really lucky to be out here doing this. Yeah, it's just it's fun and rewarding at the same time, for sure.
And what would you say has been your biggest accomplishment in your career thus far?
Ooh, I don't know. The fact that I'm doing it now for like, God, I was a graduate in like '09. We all got into broadcasting because we can't do math. So was it like 12 years? I don't even know. Um, it's just been no, that's not 12 years.
Like
Help me out,
14, I think.
14.
I can't do
Thanks.
math either.
I know, asking the wrong people, wrong crowd. Um, yeah, 14 years. Whoo, gosh, I remember when I was like 14 years old. That's disgusting. But anyway, it's yeah, probably just the longevity of it all. Like, am I where I want to be? No, but that's okay. Like, I think that realization is something that is the hardest to grasp when you first start out because you just picture your career going in so many different directions and the instant gratification of it all. But I'm proud of the way that I've worked really hard to be in the spot that I am. And I feel like it's given me a certain credibility when I walk into this building and I'm like, know what I'm doing, know what I'm talking about, know what to do, have some say, um, and can stand up confidently with my opinion on things because I don't know if I could have done that 10 years ago. You know, I don't think Tatum 10 years ago could be excelling where I am right now. Now I could have, it would have been different and it would have been a different learning lesson. But coming in here with the confidence and the knowledge and experience was just really good for me to just continue to grow and use it to get better and better. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud of is just, you know, I've had a lot of friends get out, had a lot of, not that they gave up, but just like situations were hard. I've seen a lot of people burn out, a lot of people making decisions for their own mental health. And while that's really important to me, I was just really lucky to find a situation where I can appreciate what I do and get to do what I want to do, as well as not have, you know, like mental health in the tank kind of thing or in the bottom of the tank, whatever it's called. And so I think that's probably what I'm most proud of. I don't know if there's any like one singular thing until the Vikings win a Super Bowl. I don't know if there's anything I'll be like the most proud of, right?
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to graduate and you've been in this business for a long time. What kind of advice would you give to someone that's getting ready to graduate and wants to get in the field and wants to do what you do one day?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say yes to anything and everything. Like, no job is too small or too big for you. Ask questions and be a sponge and learn because you don't know everything. And I don't know everything. And I've been doing this for how long, right? So I just think that if you have such a receptive, positive attitude, that it can really go a long way. And I will say, like, one of the biggest things that I've always stuck to is like, yes, you're the face like on television, you're the one asking the questions and doing the shoots and editing, but like you're never alone in it all. There's always an assignment editor or a director or a producer or your news director or things like that that you rely on for help. And so it's always important to think of others and to be thankful for what they do to help you out. Because I know with me on this side of things now, I do like what I do is very different. Like I manage more content where I get people to where they need to be for the pieces of content that I'm on, as opposed to doing all of that stuff myself. So it's a nice change of pace because I'm not doing all of the jobs, but because I'm relying on others, it's just very important to me that I'm communicating correctly, respectfully, properly, and giving them thanks at the end of the day for doing those things that make my life easier and the overall product better because honestly, they don't want to be on air and I don't want to edit, right? So like the fact that we can meet in the middle here and like make it all work, I think it's important the way that you treat people in those circumstances as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tatum, for joining us on Behind the Mic in the SEC. This concludes the series.